Episode 22, The Broken Mirror. It was a Saturday night, and Tiara was at home alone studying as her exams were around the corner. So, although her parents were out till late, she didn't mind being at home by herself, even though she usually hated it. In fact, for once she was glad that her parents were away. While Tiara was intensely studying, she reached towards her right side for her cup of iced coffee, which was placed on the same study table. As she reached out without looking, Tiara accidentally knocked over her small cosmetic mirror, which was placed near her cup, but slightly closer to her. The mirror fell flat on the floor as it cracked into pieces. Not too disappointed, as she bought it at a really cheap price online, Tiara wanted to sweep it off the floor and throw it into the bin. As she was about to do so, Tiara suddenly remembered about how her superstitious mom would usually tell her things that made no sense to her, such as not to sit at the pointy edge of the table or clip your nails at night. She also remembered how her mom used to tell her about broken mirrors giving 7 years of bad luck. The part about the broken mirrors reminded Tiara of an incident where Tiara accidentally broke a kitchen mirror, and her mom made her throw salt over her left shoulder and spin 3 times counterclockwise to remove the bad luck. Tiara remembered how ridiculous she felt doing it, and initially even hoped that a hint of bad luck would happen so that she could tell her mom that her ritual didn't work. But to Tiara's disappointment, nothing bad happened to her after the incident. As Tiara was now looking at the broken mirror on her bedroom floor, she thought about how troublesome it was to get salt from the kitchen. Tiara then quickly swept up the broken mirror and poured it into her room's trash bin. Tiara then continued to focus on her studies in silence. As Tiara was studying deep into the night, she suddenly heard a knock on the front door. Thinking that her parents were back home but must have forgotten their keys, she looked at her phone to see the time. She noticed that it was only 10 p.m., and wondered why her parents were back earlier than expected. Tiara went out of her bedroom, went down the steps and towards the front door as the knocks on the door still continued. However, as Tiara looked through the peephole, no one was there. Tiara took a step back and scratched her head, confused and wondering if she had really heard knocks on the door or if she was hallucinating from being too stressed from her studies. Suddenly, loud bangings on the door followed, which shocked Tiara. Fearing if it might have been someone dangerous trying to get in, Tiara looked closely at the doorknob to ensure that it was locked, ran back up to her room, and locked the door. As she sat in her room quietly to listen to whether there were any more knocks or loud bangs on her front door, she realized that the sounds disappeared. Then, as Tiara tried to calm herself down and begin studying again, she was stunned as her cell phone suddenly rang. It was her dad. As Tiara picked up the phone and said, "Hello," her dad said, "Hey, honey, what are you up to?" "Just studying. What time will you guys be home?" asked Tiara. Tiara's dad then replied, "You miss us already. Anyway, just wanted to let you know that we will be home late. We'll maybe arrive home at around 1 a.m. Okay, sweetie? If you're hungry, you can order a pizza. There's some money on the kitchen table." "Okay, Dad, thanks," said Tiara. The call that Tiara's dad made, which usually annoyed Tiara, was for once calming to her, as she was slightly on the edge after the knocks on the door earlier. Now that Tiara had calmed down, she began to refocus on her studies again. Little did she realize that it was midnight, and the wall clock in her bedroom chimed. On Tiara's wall clock, there was a mirror right on the timepiece, and unfortunately, the mirror's angle reflected her bedroom window. So, whenever Tiara sat on her study chair and looked up to the clock, not only would she be able to see herself in the clock's mirror, she could also see the window right behind her. Tiara looked up at her wall clock to confirm that it was already midnight. To her horror, Tiara saw from her clock's mirror a lady in a red dress right outside her window. And as Tiara's room was on the second floor, the only logical explanation was that the person was floating right outside. Tiara then quickly turned around to look at her window. Although no one was there, Tiara was now beginning to feel frightened. And what made it worse was that the sound of knocking on her front door began again. She knew this time it wasn't her parents, since her dad told her that they would be back at only about 1 a.m. Feeling terrified now, Tiara finally called the police. After she had put down the call, Tiara then heard as though someone was trying to break through the front door. She then heard heavy steps walking back and forth on the front porch. The heavy steps sounded like someone huge walking about, much different to the sound of footsteps that her parents would make. Still in a state of fear, hoping that the police would arrive soon, Tiara suddenly remembered about the mirror that she had swept off. Tiara knew that if it was indeed the broken mirror that brought a curse upon her, she had to take actions, as how her mom used to tell her. As she had nothing to lose for being superstitious for once, Tiara finally decided to listen to her mom's advice. To lift the broken mirror's curse, Tiara knew exactly what she needed to do. She quietly tiptoed down the stairs, hoping that the person outside her home wouldn't notice her. Once she was on the first floor, Tiara stayed low and crawled towards the kitchen, which was at the back of the house. As she was doing so, Tiara suddenly heard the front door break open. She realized that now the person was in her house. Terrified and squatting in the dark kitchen, she crawled over to where the salt was placed, but on an upper shelf. Tiara had to stretch and reach upwards for it, and once she got a hold of the salt shaker, she quickly poured some out onto her right hand. As Tiara continued to hear the heavy footsteps of the man walking from the front part of the house towards the kitchen area at the back, Tiara quickly threw the salt on her hand over her left shoulder. She then stood up and spun counterclockwise 3 times. Right when Tiara was done spinning, to her fear, she saw a huge silhouette standing firmly without a tinge of movement near the entrance of the kitchen about 5 meters away from her. There and then, she knew that the huge figure was looking right at her. However, Tiara couldn't make out the face of the man who was facing right at her, as the lights were off. As Tiara was now fearing for her life and shivering more than she ever remembered, a couple of voices were suddenly heard near the front door. "Police! Police!" Tiara felt both relieved but still terrified, and her knees weakened as she fell on the floor. She squatted in a corner of the kitchen and covered her ears while keeping her eyes shut. After realizing that she wasn't hearing any sounds anymore, Tiara reopened her eyes to see her surroundings. That was when Tiara saw 2 police officers looking concerned as they approached her. "Are you okay, young lady?" asked one of the officers. Looking blankly at them, while still in fear, all Tiara could voice out softly was, Yeah, I'm okay." "You are the one who called for the police, right, miss?" asked the other officer. "Yes, I did. I don't know who he was. I don't know why he broke into the house," said Tiara, still in a soft voice. After the police officers briefly looked at each other, one of them said, "Who were you talking about, miss? When we came in, we also thought that someone might have broken into the place, as the front door was wide open. But when we went in, there wasn't anyone inside. And our colleagues outside searching the area couldn't find anyone either." As the police officers were still looking around the home to make sure that there wasn't anyone trespassing the home, Tiara called her dad to tell him about what had happened. Her parents, who were already on their way home, soon arrived. Tiara told her mom about every detail she experienced and also let her know about the broken mirror. Being her superstitious self, Tiara's mom was glad that Tiara finally listened to her advice about what she needed to do in such a situation. Tiara also realized from the wall clock in her room that the broken mirror not only brought bad luck to her, it also opened another world. A world where she crossed paths with the floating lady in the dress and also the large man that she knew she clearly saw entering her kitchen. From that day on, Tiara realized that the whole incident could have been just her imagination, and that she probably opened the front door herself. But Tiara knew that it was also possible that her mom's beliefs about the salt and the spins saved her from whatever spirits that were wandering and waiting to haunt her for 7 years worth of bad luck.